Good evening. We begin tonight with a record. Today was Sydney's hottest September day in 23 years. The dangerous conditions kept firefighters on red alert as fires sparked around the city. And as an El Niño was finally declared, we are being warned this is just the beginning.
This is what firefighters had feared. A bushfire igniting near Silverdale Road at Wallachia as temperatures soared into the 30s. The heat and strong winds, a dangerous combination. Crews spent the day putting out spot fires, like this one in Kemps Creek. While flames came within metres of these homes in Bankstown. On the far south coast, the risk was upgraded to catastrophic for the first time since 2019, forcing 20 schools to close and thousands of students from towns like Bega to stay home.
Well, I think it's a sensible idea. I don't think a lot of classrooms have air conditioning.
I can understand there's a lot of leftover anxiety from the previous bushfires. It just takes one person to do the wrong thing and we'll be all back in the same situation.
In Sydney, the beaches provided some relief. Those lucky enough to be on a day off, soaking up the sun at Bronte.
It's really hot, very, very sunny.
It's never been this hot usually in the spring.
It's, quite a scorcher.
At James Roos Reserve in Parramatta, preschoolers cooled off at the water park.
They're having a ball. As you can see, they've been running around probably for over an hour now. It's the first time we get to let the kids out in, the warmth.
While a lunchtime game of soccer seemed like a good idea at the time.
It's tough.
Rain, hail, shine, we're here.
At Thredbo, 17 centimetres of fresh snow that fell just 10 days ago has turned to mud. And we're now being warned this is just a taste of what's to come. The Bureau of Meteorology today declaring an El Niño, which suggests we're in for a dry and hot summer ahead.
El Niño means that we've elevated the risk of fire danger and extreme heat in particular.
A frightening prospect for those still rebuilding after the catastrophic Black Summer bushfires.
I just pack the car up as best as possible and then head for the beach.
In Parramatta, Kate Creedon, 9 News.
Let's go to Nine's Lizzie Pearl at RFS headquarters. Lizzie, another total fire ban has been declared for tomorrow. Which areas are affected?
Pete, all of Sydney, the Hunter and the upper central Western Plains, so areas around Gilgandra and Coonamble, will be under that total fire ban. That means some national parks in Sydney will be closed due to dangerous fire conditions. Tonight, there are 73 fires burning across our state. 15 of them are uncontained, however, all are at advice level. Conditions are expected to deteriorate tonight with those winds picking up, and tomorrow morning we could very well wake to hot, strong westerly winds. That means tomorrow Sydney and the Hunter Valley will be under extreme fire danger. We did see parts of the south coast under a catastrophic fire rating today. Conditions there have somewhat eased this afternoon. Things are expected to cool off by Thursday, Pete. However, we'll see a return of the heat next week.
OK, Lizzie, thank you. Let's bring in Amber. Amber, which suburb sweltered most?
Good evening to you, Pete. Well, today it was the airport that was the hottest place in Sydney, reaching 36 degrees. That is the warmest day since records began there 84 years ago. The city's top of 35 degrees was 15 degrees above average, while in our west, Bankstown, Penrith and Richmond also saw a top of 35 degrees, 34 in Campbelltown. As we've heard, the Bureau has officially declared an El Niño more than 2 months after international organisations. This means warmer daytime temperatures, including more extreme heat events like the one we're having now, and below average rainfall. The knock-on effects could include a decrease in crop production due to drier soil, an increased risk of bushfires over summer, and the Great Barrier Reef risks an increased chance of further coral bleaching. There's also the risk of increased frosts, reduced tropical cyclones, a delayed monsoon season, and less alpine snow. Pete?
Amber, thank you. Thousands of new homes will be built using public money in what the state government is selling as a major shift to tackle the housing crisis. It's the centrepiece of Labor's first budget, which includes dramatic spending cuts to restore the bottom line.
Labor back in government and the Treasurer's first budget heading back into the black.
This is a budget that gives the people of New South Wales the fresh start that they voted for.
As Daniel Mulkey rebuilds the bottom line.
Can you take us through the ball?
Yeah, I certainly can.
He's also laying the groundwork for a housing boom, $2.2 billion set aside.
This is the equivalent of us checking under the sofa to see whether there's any money that was left over and using it properly.
The money will see more than 4,500 new homes built, 30% of which will be designated affordable housing. It will also fund sewerage connections, footpaths, parks, streetlights, local roads and schools to support new suburbs, infrastructure families in new areas like Jordan Springs and Marsden Park say was lacking when they moved in.
You can't get the keys to your house unless there's a street that goes to your driveway. If we don't build the streets, no one will build the homes.
But with tens of thousands of new homes needed each year to meet demand, this is being criticised as a drop in the ocean.
Overall, it was a modest start. There's a lot more to do.
Ironically, as the government vows to tackle housing affordability, its own budget is propped up by Sydney's sky-high property prices, the state expecting to enjoy a $9.5 billion stamp duty windfall over the next 4 years.
That, coupled with spending cuts forecast to restore the state to an $844 million surplus next financial year.
We are the first government not to spend every dollar that comes into the New South Wales Treasury in years. What we are doing is putting aside that money for a rainy day.
But restrained spending means cost of living help is modest, a $60 weekly toll cap, $500 preschool fee relief and energy rebates for low-income families.
This is a government that is delivering for union mates at the expense of families.
The opposition criticising Labor's ballooning wages bill after nurses, teachers and other frontline workers were handed record pay deals.
This is a budget built on quicksand.
But spending on infrastructure hasn't stalled. $770 million funnelled into 23 road projects, including the flood-prone Richmond Road, Pitttown Bypass and the Driftway at Londonderry. $303 million will be spent on a rapid bus network to connect residents in Penrith, Liverpool and Campbelltown to the new Western Sydney Airport, and hospital upgrades at Blacktown, Mount Druitt, Canterbury, Fairfield, Bankstown and a new build at Rouse Hill will see 600 extra beds across Western Sydney, all part of a budget full of shifting priorities.
Relief right now and reform for tomorrow.
Liz Daniels, 9 News.
And Liz is with me in the studio. Liz, there's one key assumption in the budget that could put the Treasurer on a collision course with Canberra.
Peter, it's the old GST argument all over again. The state's written its forecasts based off the current no worse off clause, only that is due to expire in 3 years' time. If it falls apart, the budget books say it could be disastrous, costing the equivalent of 8,000 nursing positions. The Treasurer has made it clear he wants the funding guarantee permanent, and for the moment at least, discussions with the Commonwealth are tracking well. Peter.
Liz, thank you. 2 young women have been identified as the victims of a stabbing rampage at one of the nation's most respected universities. Tonight, a former student of ANU is behind bars, charged with attempted murder.
In the grips of police, 24-year-old former student Alex Ophel is taken into custody, ending his alleged violent rampage through the grounds of the Australian National University in Canberra.
It's pretty insane. I don't know. It's just like something I didn't expect to happen at ANU, I guess.
Really scary to think that you could just be going to uni one day and not be safe.
Police claim he arrived at the Fellows Oval around 2:30 yesterday afternoon, armed with a fry pan and knife. Over the next 30 minutes, it's alleged he attacked 4 strangers, first hitting 2 male international students over the head with the pan, before stabbing 2 20-year-old women, eventually arrested by police nearby.
Obviously, any violent offence is concerning. ANU and Canberra are usually very safe places, and incidents like this are extremely rare.
Student Alicia Perry was critically injured and tonight remains fighting for life in hospital. Isabel Vasudeva was also wounded and is in a stable condition. The university praising students and staff who saw the danger and ran in to help.
Several members of staff and students stepped in to shepherd others away from the course that this person was taking across campus.
It's the second attack at the campus in recent times. In 2017, 5 people were assaulted by a former student with a baseball bat. The university says it will be increasing security patrols. After speaking with his lawyer, Ophel decided not to apply for bail. Instead, he was taken away for a mental health assessment. He'll now remain in custody until his next court appearance on the 17th of October. A motive behind the alleged attack is unknown. In Canberra, James Wilson, 9 News.
Police are tonight looking into how a ute ended up crashing into the front of a shop at Newtown early this morning. The car veered off King Street at around 5:30 and slammed into a clothing shop, destroying its security door. The driver and passenger suffered only minor injuries. A truck driver has been charged with dangerous driving after a 66-year-old woman was hit at Lilyfield yesterday. The driver was granted conditional bail after the incident on the City West link. The victim is still in a critical condition in hospital. Australians would have enjoyed cheaper airfares and our economy would have received a $1 billion tourist boost by granting extra flights to Qatar Airways. That's what a parliamentary inquiry was told today by industry insiders who say more competition is badly needed in our aviation sector.
A Qatar Airways flight touching down at Sydney. If the airport's boss has his way, there'll be more.
We're still 25% down on services from the Middle East. I think there's strong arguments for increasing.
A Senate committee hearing Australian international travellers are paying 70% more than pre-COVID.
The airlines certainly are taking advantage of the fact that demand is exceeding supply.
The federal government's rejection of extra Qatar flights coming at a cost, including a decrease in airfares internationally of between 7 and 10%, totalling over $200 million in savings for passengers, and a drastic increase in inbound tourism, particularly from Europe.
That is likely to be somewhere in the order of $1 billion if you include multiplier effects.
And there could be more.
With Qatar adding capacity to the European market, we may see airlines attempt to preserve their market share and add capacity to the market as well.
The committee hearing of aggressive responses from the flying kangaroo to any flying competition.
This country needs more consumer protections from the likes of Qantas, and the sooner that happens, the better.
Tonight, the current and former CEOs of Qantas, as well as Chairman Richard Goyder and representatives from Qatar Airways and the Qatari ambassador, have all received invitations to testify.
Those entities that refuse the committee's kind invitation will be summoned by the committee.
A representative from Qatar will front the inquiry here in Canberra next week. The airline's still hopeful the decision will be overturned. As the inquiry opens tonight, Qantas responding by cutting prices to win back customers. A footy final sale slashing prices to the East Coast for the NRL and AFL deciders. Charles Croucher, 9 News.
Virgin Australia has grounded 2 of its planes after it was revealed their engines were fitted with unauthorised parts. The Boeing 737-800s are normally used on domestic services. It's believed the airline was notified of falsified certification documents for parts that came from a British supplier. For the first time, a supposedly non-lethal police weapon has killed someone in New South Wales. The death of a Newcastle woman during a 9-hour siege has led to beanbag rounds being temporarily removed from the police arsenal.
The final hours of Stockton mother Krista Cash's life, sitting in her bedroom with tactical police outside her door.
She told me to put my hands in the air again. Why? I'm not threat. I'm not touching anyone.
Now, her cause of death revealed, not the taser deployed by one police officer, instead another's beanbag round, billed as non-lethal, fatally hitting the 47-year-old in the heart. The use of this weapon now suspended by New South Wales Police until an investigation is finished.
Part of that review will be an international scoping exercise as well, to see if there's a particular batch of rounds that has been flawed.
The officer who fired the round today interviewed by investigators about the day he and his colleagues responded to reports Krista was armed with an axe and distressed after being told she was being evicted. It's not just the physical methods used by police which are under question, but their psychological tactics as well. The decision by negotiators to not let Krista's daughter speak to her, despite her telling officers her mother was mentally unwell and not a danger to the public.
If the attendance or access to a family member was believed by the negotiators would help control that situation and de-scale it, then that would be an option that would be deployed.
The police minister now facing calls to establish a parliamentary inquiry into how police deal with mental health cases. In Sydney, Helene Lambetsos, 9 News.
The woman who has accused Sri Lankan cricketer Danushka Gunawardene of sexual assault has spent hours under cross-examination today. His barrister tried to cast doubt on her claim. He tricked her into having unprotected sex. He said the 32-year-old would not have had an opportunity to remove the condom without her noticing. The woman disagreed. Australia is adding firepower to its maritime patrol aircraft fleet with a $1.5 billion boost. It comes as the US Marine suspended flying operations after a stealth fighter jet disappeared. The incident coming less than a month after the deadly Osprey crash in the Northern Territory.
A burnt-out crater, a seared strip of South Carolina forest and the unrecognisable remains of an F-35 fighter jet. Its pilot ejected during a so-called mishap, the $125 million plane flying on in autopilot mode, the stealth fighter near impossible to detect even over US soil until it ended up in US soil.
It was obviously on some sort of training mission where he was required to simulate low radar cross-section operations.
The US Marine Corps' air operations now on a 2-day safety stand-down and investigation underway. But until we know more, Australia's Defence Industry Minister says our F-35s will keep flying.
I think it's too early to talk about those matters. The F-35 is the most advanced fighter jet in the world, and we're very confident in the capability it provides.
The plane that crashed was an F-35B, capable of vertical takeoff and landing. The RAAF has the more conventional F-35As, a common prime ministerial prop and widely regarded as one of our greatest strengths.
The F-35 gives our Air Force, small though it is, an ability to punch above its weight.
The incident comes at a time when air safety is in sharp focus, following crashes in the Whitsundays and Darwin that claimed the lives of 4 Australian aircrew and 3 US Marines.
Safety of aircraft and aircrew is obviously paramount.
So too, keeping up with potential adversaries, announcing upgrades to our maritime patrol aircraft, $1.5 billion for a 4th Triton drone and new weapons for the submarine hunting Poseidons, making them ship hunters as well from 2025. Reece D'Alessandro, 9 News.
A desperate cross-border hunt is tonight underway for armed fugitive Stanley Turvey. Victorian police attempted to arrest the 33-year-old yesterday when he produced a gun, fled the scene and allegedly forced a man at gunpoint to drive him across the border into New South Wales. 2 police officers ended up in hospital when their car rolled as they gave chase. Police swarmed his uncle's home at Finley near the border, but Turvey wasn't there.
If you're listening, hand yourself in, mate, before it gets too bad, OK? Do it for your father. There's probably only one way you can look at it. It's going to end badly.
Extra police from both states have been mobilised to bolster the search. Shoppers were given a shock in Ballina today, a car ploughing into a Coles supermarket. The car crashed into the shop on Fox Street, missing the aisles by centimetres. 4 people were taken to hospital for assessment. 5 American former prisoners are tonight on their way home, thanks to a breakthrough between the US and Iran. For years, their fate was tied to tensions between the 2 countries, but in the coming hours, politics will take a back seat as they're reunited with loved ones.
A flight to freedom. 5 American prisoners touched down in Doha. Embraced by the US ambassador, Murad Tabaz and Ahmad Shaghi, unjustly detained for 5 years in a notorious Tehran prison. Behind bars for nearly 8 years, oil executive Siamak Namazi made this plea from jail 6 months ago.
The other hostages and I desperately need President Biden to finally hear us out, to finally hear our cry for help and bring us home.
Mr. Tabaz is a wildlife conservationist arrested during a crackdown on environmentalists and showed signs of being tortured for information. His family today said, "We are grateful to President Biden for prioritising the lives of American citizens over politics." 2 years of complicated negotiations, the US and Iran did not speak directly. Instead, Qatar and Oman acted as intermediaries.
Husbands and wives, fathers and children can hug each other again.
The 5 Americans freed. In exchange, the US government released 5 Iranians and unblocked the transfer of $9 billion of their frozen oil revenue held in South Korea. Iran can only withdraw the funds for humanitarian purposes.
If there is any diversion, and we will see it, we will lock up these funds again.
Today, US President Joe Biden warned that no American should travel to Iran, but Republicans were quick to criticise, saying the deal incentivised their bad behaviour. The White House issuing a new round of sanctions designed to punish those responsible for holding Americans captive. In the United States, Alison Petrowski, 9 News.
Furious crowds have set fire to the house of Derna's former mayor, who was suspended after the flood disaster in the Libyan city. Thousands of protesters gathered demanding accountability and blaming officials for not maintaining the 2 collapsed dams, amid reports there had been cracks in them for decades. India's government has slammed allegations by Canada's Prime Minister that it was involved in the assassination of a Sikh leader in June. Justin Trudeau says Canadian intelligence has found a credible link and made the extraordinary move to expel a top Indian diplomat. India has since expelled a senior Canadian diplomat. A spokesperson for our Foreign Minister, Penny Wong, says Australia is deeply concerned. Hunter Biden is suing the US Internal Revenue Service for allegedly violating his privacy. The US president's son says 2 agents unlawfully disclosed his tax information in 20 public interviews. Police are tonight investigating a road rage incident on a Canberra highway. 3 people were travelling along the Majura Parkway into the capital when a man began to tailgate them before speeding past and clipping their car. At one point, he stops at a green light to try and stop them, but they managed to overtake him. The trio caught it all on camera and say they were being threatened. It's been in damage control for months, and now Qantas has been left to explain another major mishap that's left hundreds of passengers stranded on the tarmac for hours. A flight from Sydney last night was struck by hydraulic system issues after it landed on the Gold Coast, forcing other flights to be diverted, delayed and cancelled.
Off the plane, but plenty of anger in the air on arrival.
Don't fly Qantas.
This was inside QF 596. 120 passengers stranded, left to sit and wait on the Gold Coast Airport runway for 3 hours after landing from Sydney at 8:30 last night.
Yeah, it's pretty frustrating. It didn't seem reasonable.
I am so disappointed in Qantas services. Rubbish, yeah. Since we've been on a plane for 5 hours.
The Boeing 737 became grounded when its steering was impacted by issues with the aircraft's hydraulic system. Firefighters and specialist engineers were called in to shine a light on the issue before the plane could be towed.
People are going to be stuff.
Paul's wife Kathy was on board. Our cameras were on the ground at the airport as the updates came in.
And it could be up to an hour before they get someone to come and help them because they don't have enough ground staff to help them through this situation.
As 1 hour turned to 3, besides a wine to help soften the pain of waiting, the in-flight service was somewhat of a drop in the ocean.
Are they serving food or giving out complimentary snacks?
No, there is a bit of red wine going around, but no, we've run out of water.
Okay.
And there's no food.
9 flights in total were impacted last night. 7 were diverted here to Brisbane, while 2 outbound flights from the Gold Coast had to be cancelled. Qantas has apologised for the inconvenience, thanking customers for their patience which is wearing thin. From Alan Joyce's resignation earlier this month to claims from the ACCC it advertised and sold tickets for flights that had been cancelled. For the embattled airline, the turbulence just isn't going away. Jacob Chico, 9 News.
YouTube has suspended the monetisation of his channel and upcoming shows have been postponed. The backlash is growing against Russell Brand after sexual assault accusations. UK police today confirmed it has received a new allegation dating back to 2003.
Days after 4 women went public with sexual abuse allegations against Russell Brand, the Met Police has stopped short of naming the comedian, but released a statement saying it's received a report of a sexual assault alleged to have taken place in Soho in central London in 2003, a claim which predates the others by years, as one of the comedian's accusers called into BBC Radio to say his denials of the allegations were insulting, claiming a BBC car would take her from school to the star's house when she was 16 and he was 30.
As I became an older woman and began reaching the same age as him, that's when I really started to feel angry. He was telling me that I'm a very intelligent woman, I'm mature. Being intelligent doesn't mean that you're not naive and that you're not vulnerable.
Promoters of Russell Brand's UK theatre tour postponing its remaining 3 one-man stand-up shows, saying we don't like doing it, but we know you'll understand, while the actor's publisher announced it was pausing all future book projects with him. The Times says since the publication of its joint investigation, more women have come forward, and it's now rigorously checking those allegations. The 48-year-old star today failed to appear for his regular live show on a social media platform after previously using it to deny all allegations against him. In London, Karianne Greenbank, 9 News.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has kicked off his visit to the United States. First stop, a meeting with Elon Musk at the Tesla factory in San Francisco. The pair discussed anti-Semitism on social media platform X, formerly known as Twitter, as well as the rise of artificial intelligence. A specialist Navy team in Bulgaria has used a controlled explosion to destroy a mortar shell found attached to a drone in the Black Sea. Authorities aren't sure whether it fell out of the sky or was carried there by water. Prince William started his 2-day visit to New York with a dip in the dirty water around Manhattan. He waded through the harbour looking at the restoration efforts of the Billion Oyster Project before talking all things climate with the head of the United Nations. He's in the US to announce the finalists of the Earthshot Prize. It's one of Sydney's most spectacular spots, beautiful parkland, rich history and some of the most stunning harbour views. Now, a plan has been unveiled to transform Manly's North Head Sanctuary in a bid to attract more visitors.
Its 74 hectares have stood sentinel to the harbour since the last ice age. But now, after more than 3 years of consultation, a draft master plan released today sees a new future for North Head.
This is a pretty unassuming service road, but we see this as the artery that leads to the heart of the site for the future.
The plan will see North Head divided into 3 precincts: the Barracks, Central and North Fort, the 3 linked by an artery of walkway that will also extend to the Head's recently opened lookouts. The Barracks precinct, the former School of Artillery, its parade ground already being used as a concert site. In the Central precinct, a space to honour North Head's place in Indigenous culture.
This area has the single biggest patch of the bushland that would have once been all around Sydney Harbour.
And lacing beneath the surface are the tunnels that supplied ammunition to the 9-inch guns of the coastal batteries. They and their now empty emplacements, part of what will be the North Fort precinct.
We're going to set up a new accessible interpretation centre so that everybody can understand what happened here in the Second World War.
The master plan is now up for public consultation, the Trust aiming to nurture it with the same care it gives to plover nests. At North Head, Mike Dalton, 9 News.